Hi, I want to show you how to paint some really quick, loose flowers on a 5x5 sheet of cold pressed watercolor paper. I kind of envision this being a note card that you could give to a family or friend, but you could use it for whatever purpose you want. They're really, really fast to whip up. I did this whole pile here. There's several, there's 20 or so here in about an hour's time. So, they maybe take 5 minutes a piece, but I'll walk you through it a little bit slower and take about 15 minutes or so to show you how to paint these. And in the middle of each card, you can kind of write whatever you want. Like for instance, this one says hello, but you could write thank you or love or whatever you want. So I know sometimes if I'm gifting something, I think right before I'm about to take it to whoever I'm giving it to, I forgot to get a card, or I should have gotten a card. So this is something really quick you can do and give it as a card or just as a little note to someone. So I hope you enjoy, and if you would like to, follow me on Instagram, Mandy Peltier Artist, and my website is mandypeltier.com. Okay, we're going to get started on this painting with an overhead view of all the supplies. So I have an artist palette here with individual wells. I don't always work by mixing my colors into individual wells, but I find that it works really well when I'm trying to teach a project, and this way you can know better how to mix the colors that we're going to use. I also have a saucer or glass filled with water. I am using the Winsor & Newton Cotman Sketchers Pocket Box set, which has 12 colors in it. You can use whatever watercolor set you have. You just may need to substitute colors, or you will need to substitute colors. I have a number 10 round brush, I have a number 6 round brush, and I have a Pen Touch metallic marker. You can use watercolor paint if you'd rather. You can just use a black felt tip marker. Whatever you have is fine. The paper we're going to be using for this project is a 5x5 sheet of watercolor paper. I am using Fabriano Artistico cold press paper. This kind right here, the Fabriano cold press 140 pound paper. This is a pretty thin watercolor paper. It's not very toothy at all, so it doesn't absorb a lot of paint, and so it's really nice for a loose, quick application for flowers. And then whenever I'm working with watercolor, I always have a paper towel handy. Okay, so we're going to mix our colors first. So I'm going to set aside my Pentec metallic marker, my number 10 round brush, my paper towel, kind of just off to the side here. Okay, so I am going to start by placing a couple scoops of water into one well on my palette, and this will just give the paint something to mix into. And I'm going to start by mixing a navy. So to mix a navy, I'm going to use the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. So I'm going to start off by maybe doing 2 passes, and when I say pass, I mean running my brush into the paint a handful of times, and then I'm going to deposit that into the 2 scoops of water. So that is 1 pass. So I'm going to do a second pass of the ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to do 2 passes of the burnt umber. Usually I'll clean my brush in between paint colors if I'm moving from a darker color to a lighter color, but since I'm moving from a lighter color to a darker color, I'm not going to bother with that. And this looks a little too brown to me, so I'm going to add a little more blue. If yours looks a little too bright blue, you'll want to add a bit more brown, but this is way too brown, so I'm going to add more ultramarine blue, and I'm going to keep adding ultramarine blue until it looks more navy. You can add more water if it starts to get a little too thick. We want a pretty equal paint to water ratio, and we will need a lot of navy here, so it's okay that I'm adding, mixing. Okay, I think what I have here is probably a pretty navy. I'm going to test just at the top of my sheet here. That is really dark. I might lighten it up just a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to stop there. Now what we're going to mix is black. So black is going to be the same thing, only it's going to be heavier on the burnt umber than on the blue. So the two of these together, mixed together, make like a really natural, nice looking black. So I'm going to put 2 more scoops of water into the next well of my palette. I don't mind that there's some blue on the brush because I'm using the same 2 colors for this one. So I'm going to start with 2 passes of each again, and then make some adjustments based on what we come up with. All right, a little on the brown side, so just a touch more blue to neutralize that brown. And there we go. So you can see we have a nice natural looking black. That one came together a little bit faster. All right, now I'm gonna quickly clean my brush. I'm gonna dab it on my paper towel. I'm going to place 2 scoops of water into the next well of my palette. And the next color we're going to mix is sort of a buttercream yellow. So I'm going to do a pass of burnt ochre. And then I'm going to do a few passes of lemon yellow until this color is sort of lightened up just a little. I don't want it to be as yellow as a lemon yellow, but I want it to be a little bit lighter than what the yellow ochre is on its own. So I like this color. This is pretty. All right, kind of a nice little buttercream or ochre colored yellow. And then I'm going to make a darker version of this that we'll use in a couple spots. So I'm going to use the yellow ochre, and I'm going to darken it with burnt sienna. So I just did a pass of the yellow ochre, and I'll likely do 2 to 3 passes of the burnt sienna. It's all sort of a give and take game until you like how it looks. All right, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to mix a couple greens. I'm going to mix a green that is more sap looking and then more of a bright blue green. Well, it'll end up being a dark green, but it's going to use the Viridian green and the ultramarine blue. All right, so I'm going to 2 scoops of water to the next bowl of my palette. I'm going to do a couple passes of the sap green. I'm going to add to that the burnt sienna. I did about 1.5 pass there. That's a little too puke looking, so I'm gonna add a little more of the sap green. I want that influence of the brown in there, but I don't want it to be an ugly color. All right, I like how that looks. Okay, and now we'll mix the brighter green. 2 scoops, I'm gonna do Viridian green. 2 passes of Viridian green into those 2 scoops of water. I'm going to do 1 pass of the ultramarine blue. You can see it's a much brighter blue color. It's a turquoise that we just mixed by mixing the blue and the green. And now I'm going to darken it a little by adding some of that burnt umber to it. Let me see how that looks. Ooh, I like it. It's pretty. I don't quite have the right paint to water ratio, so I'm going to add a little bit more of each color so that it's equal paint to water ratio. Very nice. Okay. And then we are ready to get started with these 6 colors. I'm going to clean my number 6 brush in the water, dab it on my paper towel, and I'm going to set it aside. We really just are using the number 6 brush to mix our palette because the number 10 is just so chunky and it absorbs so much water. It would just make it really hard to paint with. All right, so I'll turn this to the side here, pull this in. So this is a card that doesn't need an outline. We can just sort of freehand it. The very first flower we're going to draw, I guess you could consider more of kind of an open side view peony. And so I'm going to put my number 10 brush in the water to wet those bristles, wipe it on the edge a few times, dab it on the paper towel, and I'm going to pick up this color that's sort of the orangey brown. And with my brush, I'm going to do just some random squiggle strokes that are only about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch in length. They're going to vary. So I'm going to do sort of like a loop and then a straight up and down. So I'm just sort of painting on sort of the center of the flower. And I'm going to quickly swish my brush, wipe it on the rim of the glass. I'm going to use my navy. And I'm going to start by drawing like a W. But I'm okay that my strokes are coming in on themselves, kind of a W on the bottom, and then sort of a C to the right, And I'm not going to add more paint to my brush. As I add color, it's going to get lighter in value because the water at the top is going to pull down towards the tip. And then over here, I'm going to draw just a 1/2 of an M. And then I'm going to draw the second half of the M. And then I might draw another tiny M. And then up here, I might draw like a rainbow shape. And then I might draw a C over here. And maybe over here, another kind of C. So I'm just drawing various shapes to sort of fill in this flower very loosely. I might draw just another C right above. And then let the colors bleed in where they meet. And then I'm done. I'm not going to touch the peony anymore. It has the loose look that I want, and I'm going to leave it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip the tip of my brush into my darker green, and I'm going to do one curved line, and then I'm going to do another curved line, and you can fill in just a little bit in the middle, but I do like there to be a little bit of negative space, and then I'm just going to leave it. Rinse my brush, dab it on the paper towel. Oh, it's still a little bit dirty, so I'm going to do it again. Now what we're going to draw is sort of a ranunculus shape. So I'm going to use my sort of mustard yellow color for that. And I'm just going to draw basically rainbows or arches. And they're going to get a little bit bigger as we go up, up, up. And we can sort of break them up into different strokes. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start by just drawing like a moon shape or a rainbow shape. And then I'm just going to carefully just add to it. It's okay if some of the lines connect. We kind of want that. So there's some nice movement on our ranunculus. And I'm just going to work my way around and around. And then I can sort of darken some of it up by pulling a little bit of this orangish brown again and just doing a few little quick strokes with that on top. That's wet into wet. And I'm going to quickly rinse my brush, dab it on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up a little bit of our black, and I'm just going to dot along the bottom. I'm not going to totally cover the tooth of the paper, and that's going to sort of bleed into some of the yellow and just kind of create the middle part of the ranunculus. Swish my brush, dab it on a paper towel. I'm going to pick up this more olive looking green, and I'm going to draw another leaf at the top. So I'm going to do a side stroke, and maybe just one through the middle, but I do want some of that negative space. Okay, now up in this corner we're going to draw a anemone. It's going to be a navy blue anemone, just like this is a navy blue peony. And so I'm going to take some of the navy here, and I'm going to start by doing 4 dots sort of in the upper left corner. And I have this scrap sheet of paper below so that paint can sort of run off into it if I go out of bounds here. And so I'm going to draw 4 petals. I'm going to leave the very center without any color, but I'm going to draw 4 petals. So I'm going to curve out and sort of do a very shallow M shape. And then I might just fill in part of it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, a very kind of shallow M shape petal. I'm going to do the same over here. So you can see I can sort of go outside of the bounds of the paper if it helps me have control. All right, and then I might just fill that in there. I'm going to quickly swish my brush, dab it on a paper towel, pick up some black. I'm going to dot it in the middle. And then with a toothpick, you can draw little veins if you want. That's totally optional. You can just let it bleed as it is, but I think it is sort of fun to pull some of those out. And it looks a little bit more like an anemone when you do that. Swish your brush, dab it on a paper towel, and then with your darker green, we're going to draw the leaf for an anemone. A leaf for an anemone looks a lot like a dill leaf. So I'm going to just start by drawing a line on the left side, and it's okay if it bleeds into the petals. We want that loose kind of look. And then I'm just going to draw thin little lines all throughout this. It's only getting one color. It does not have to be perfect. I'm just doing it real quick here. I'm not worrying if every point is perfectly pointy or straight. And there's our anemone. And now our last flower could really be any number of flowers. It could be a rose. It could be another peony from a side view. So we're going to use our yellow ochre for this, our yellow ochre and lemon yellow mixture. I'm going to pick some up with my number 10 brush, and I'm going to start by just drawing a big curved shape and gently filling it in. And then I'm going to draw sort of another side petal. So I just kind of drew that C shape. I'm going to draw another one over here. And then with the tip of my brush, I'm going to pick up some of that green just with the very, very tip of my brush. And then I'm just going to draw a smaller sort of arch shape just to add a little bit more color. And now with our lighter green, I am going to just draw a stem that sort of curves up and around the anemone. And I'm just going to draw some very loose leaves here. I'm just drawing 2 arches, and if they meet, they meet. If they don't, they don't. Okay, and then I'm going to dab my brush in the water, dab it on a paper towel, pick up the darker green, and I'm just going to add a little leaf over here. That's really it for these really quick greeting cards that are floral. I talked you through and demoed this within 15 minutes. I can make one in about 5 minutes if I'm just working and doing it really fast. When you're done painting, you can write something in the middle like hello or hi or thank you or mom. There's a number of things you can write with the marker. You might want to use a pencil to just sort of do an initial outline of whatever it is you want to write. I'll just freehand it today, so it probably won't look perfect or very good. So I just wrote hi in the middle, but you could write just about anything you want, and you can do it with the Pentek metallic marker. So I hope that this instructional tutorial was fun, and I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you'll give this a try.